Morning, Nancy.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Chamber's first interactive webinar that we've put on. I'm Joy Gash, I'm president of the Chamber, and it is my pleasure this morning to welcome Nikki Devitt to our community via the web. This morning is going to be a little bit different. If you participated in our webinars, we really felt it was important to be able to have interaction between all of you folks here and Nikki. So for the beginning of the presentation, everyone will be on mute. Nikki will do a brief presentation, and then we will open it up for a dialogue, because once you meet Nikki, you'll know that she loves to engage and loves to have conversation. We have about 25 folks that will be joining us this morning. So we think that this really makes a lot of sense for you all to get the most out of this exchange of information. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Nikki. Nikki is a president, very new president. She assumed the position in this year, actually. By her own admission, loves to communicate. She likes to talk. After kicking off her 20s in the world of sales and marketing, she discovered that her lifelong love of performing in the theater had her primed and ready to actually get paid to talk for a living. She spent 10 years in the broadcasting world, working in multiple aspects of the radio industry. While the majority of her time was spent on the air, she was also able to feed her need to market and manage client accounts. Eventually, she discovered she could further her obsession with always having something to do 24 hours a day by working as a program operations director for one of the largest stations in northern Michigan. The only thing that could pull her away from the world of radio was a quiet Chamber of Commerce job that thankfully turned out to be just the opposite. After 6 years as the event and communications director, she accepted the position of president and is proud to be part of an award-winning organization and continue to help foster growth for the community that she loves so much, as only a Chamber of Commerce can do. Let's give her a virtual clap. Welcome, Nikki. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Vicky and there's Nikki. So if Amy, could we see other people's faces too? For those of you that have stopped your video, could you start it? I think it's nice to have a live audience for Nikki. And Nikki, you can unmute and the show is yours.
Thank you, Joy. Well, good morning, everyone. Hello from Northern Michigan. I hope you are all well, and glad to be here, glad to be able to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about what we're seeing as Region 6 and 8. We opened partially our retail and restaurants with a lot of restrictions this past weekend, Memorial Day weekend, no less. So we had a very interesting week last week and a very interesting weekend as well. So I wanted to pull together a little bit. Let me get this up and running for you. Zoom PowerPoints are always fun. So here we go. All right, everybody see the screen? Just give me a nod if you can. Perfect. So, lessons learned from our reopening weekend. First and foremost, I probably should say that the Petoskey Regional Chamber of Commerce is part of a chamber alliance. We have 16 chambers in Northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula and economic development entities that represent about 7,000 businesses. And we started legislating quite hard when we first saw the MERC regions appear from the governor's office, that regions 6 and 8 were in a different position as far as opening goes. And we surprisingly the Sunday before last, got a phone call and said, hey, governor's speaking tomorrow. We're going to talk about in regions 6 and 8 early. Come on down. We sent our amazing Alliance chair. And, you know, we were totally expecting as Region 6 and 8 that on May 29th, we would have the ability to open a little bit more. What we were not anticipating until Monday morning was that, hey, guess what? You can open Friday. So that put a little bit of a strain on our retailers and our restaurant to get things going. So short time frame we had. The good part about this is that by us opening first, we have now given the rest of the state some opportunities to see what works and what doesn't. And that's what we intended all along. So we're grateful for that, even though we were under the gun, to put it mildly. So a couple things that we worked on very hard last week with our members and our businesses, our retailers and restaurants is really going through Executive Order 97. So 92 was the one that allowed us to open. And as you know, I think there's 104 executive orders right now. So this gets a little confusing. But 92 was the one that allowed us to open. It was replaced by 96 a couple hours later. It seemed like 97 is the one that has the safeguards to protect Michigan's workers from COVID. That is something you want to become vitally familiar with, because that is going to outline what you need to do, what you are required to do as a business. We spent a lot of time going through this with our members last week, working to figure out what was best for them to put in place. So first and foremost, getting very familiar with that executive order is something that, you know, we have highlighted copies all over the place because we know that it's different for everyone. The PowerPoint I will share after the fact too, because I've got some links in there for you. We put together a Google form for our businesses as well. You're probably familiar with this already, but you're going to need to do self-reporting for your staff. Whether you do that when they enter the building or before they come in. A lot of our members, a lot of our businesses have found it's much easier to have people take their temperature and answer their questions before they come in because thermometers are very hard to find. And so don't search out one and not be able to find it. A nice Google form that you can use for employee self-reporting, and then that tracks it for you, because you are required to track a lot of things with your employees to make sure that they are doing the safe practices. When mentioned last Monday that there was going to be opening, one of the very first things that was brought up was the COVID-19 preparedness response plan. We didn't have that until Tuesday. So that was a little bit of a difficulty. So for us, and it'll change based on regions, we had to have all businesses that were preparing to open have this response plan completed. And it's big. There's a lot that is required. There's a tremendous amount of difference between low risk, high risk, medium risk based off of the OSHA guidelines and prepping workplaces. So when we finally got this on last Tuesday, it made it a little easier for us. So there's a couple templates here that our businesses have found to be the most helpful. There's several out there. One is from SBAM, and then the Michigan Chamber also has several different templates as well. Familiarizing yourself with the OSHA guidelines on prepping your workplaces is going to be a big deal too. It reads like an OSHA guideline, but it is important. And our local health department and yours will do the same. They're working very hard to provide business toolkits that do have some resources for you locally and beyond that do help, because every region is going to be different. So getting those in your hands and getting ready now, even if June 12th is stay home, stay safe lift, we don't know how quickly that you could see a change, and maybe your region could have limited opening beyond what we're going to have as far as the 10-person appointment retail. So one of the things that we did quickly last week was messaging signage. So all businesses are required by the executive order to have signage in place that states a couple different things. One is that you should wash your hands often. 2, wear a mask, and we'll get on to the mask subject here in a few minutes. And 3 is keep that social distancing. Also, signage required by the executive order states that by entering, you agree that you have not or currently are ill. And this is a protection, a legislation protection too. One of the many things that you can do to protect yourself as a business from any legal issues that everybody is concerned with, obviously, for COVID-19. Using a universal message is what we found helps. We went into hyper mode quickly with our municipalities, our health department, and our hospital to make sure that we had those signs in the hands of every business. We're still working to get them in parks and everywhere as quickly as possible. Making sure you have occupancy posted is going to be a big one. We found the businesses this past weekend that didn't have occupancy posted on their door had a little bit rougher time than the ones who did. So if your occupancy based off of what your parameters are going to be, and most likely what we see as what you can have for occupancy is going to be the same. So I'm assuming, we're hoping, that the parameters that were put in place for retail and restaurant for Region 6 and 8 will be the same as they go through for everybody starting to open into the next phases throughout the state. So those parameters, if you're probably very familiar with, but would be 25% of your capacity for your fire marshal and what you have for your building codes if you're a retail, and 50% of your seating if you are a restaurant. Those are not easy numbers to get to, and sometimes the calculations are tough too. And if you need to, I can give you some tricks that we had with our fire marshal, helping businesses who said, I have no clue what my square footage, how that even applies. How do I calculate that? I don't know. So there are ways to do that and be safe with that. But that universal message of your occupancy is going to be a really big thing. So here's what we found from our opening weekend. So we did a survey of our members yesterday and area businesses, and 20% chose not to open this weekend. They wanted to prepare better, get the guidelines in place, make sure they had all the answers. It was a very, very short time frame for them. And in addition to that, they wanted to avoid the rush. For those not familiar with Petoskey, we live year round here in this beautiful place. But for a few months out of the year, our population almost quadruples. And so it's a rush, and we know it, and we prepare for it every year, and we know how to do it. But in that short time frame and after being closed for so long, there was a little bit of concern for that. And also kind of some of the businesses that we talked to said, you know, maybe if I don't open, it'll be a little easier on everybody else. And I think in hindsight, that was very helpful. 80% saw sales between 50 and 80% of last year. That is a big thing. For some, that was more than they were ready for. And for others, you know, at least having 50% was better than nothing. Memorial Day is a huge weekend for us in Northern Michigan. And to have a few of our businesses that were saying, yeah, it was, you know, it was great. It was wonderful. It was very spaced out though. That was one thing that we did notice in observing and talking to our businesses, is that while they saw 50 to 80% of sales over the course of the 3 days from last year, it wasn't all in that big rush that we normally kind of get on Friday and Saturday. It was much more spaced out. And I think that was because people were just kind of, you know, hesitant to see what it was like. 60% required masks and turned people away for not wearing a mask. Mask is going to be your biggest issue, hands down. And this week it's actually fired up even more with discussions, and I'll get to that. It's been very, very interesting what the mask discussion has done to our community in just a short amount of time. 90% of our businesses had safe signage for their opening weekend. Those that didn't said they realized that it was a major mistake on their part, and some of them even were putting it up over the weekend. Now, keeping in mind that masks and safe signage are required by the executive order, but all businesses do things differently. 70% of our businesses, and this includes restaurant and retail, offered curbside options in addition to people being able to enter the business. And they all said the same thing. Curbside is not going to go away. It provided for a large portion of their sales, and it provided those who are not ready yet to engage in the public an opportunity to still patronize a local business and meet their needs. So that's a big takeaway from that, from our businesses. So some of the biggest challenges that we heard back from is not sure what to say to maskless people. This was really tough, and it went on not just through the weekend, but it's gone on through the rest of this week as well. Another challenge that you're going to have to prepare for is deciding what employees you can bring back to work. So some are going to be in high risk groups or have compromised immune systems. Also, you're going to know full well that some of your employees do not have childcare. This puts a tremendous amount of pressure on a business. It's a protection for your employees to take care of them, to be there for them. But in the same token, you are a business and you need to operate, and you need to have that staff on hand. So that is going to be something that you should, you know, the quicker you work through that and communicate with your employees, the better off you're going to be moving forward. Also, one thing that we did notice is that the biggest fight for people coming into our communities to wear masks are people from other states. So we get a tremendous amount of out-of-state traffic in Northern Michigan and downstate as well. But you know, we play license plate bingo in our chamber. And usually what that is we have a nice little card with all 50 states on it. And our little staff of 4 can find a license plate in town for all 50 states, Hawaii and Alaska, usually by 4th of July. We start at Memorial Day weekend. Obviously, we're not doing it this year. So that shows you that, you know, we get a tremendous amount of out-of-state traffic, and I know you do too. So what we found is that was where there was a lot of pushback and a lot of people that weren't wearing the masks. Locals were enthusiastic. We've been embracing this. As we say up in Northern Michigan, we're not flattening the curve, we're crushing the curve. So we've been working really hard towards that. Maintaining social distancing inside and outside of businesses is tough. Restaurants who are limited to 50% capacity, many of them are putting markings on their sidewalks outside to say, you know, please go outside and wait until we call you in with your reservation. Maintaining that social distancing was difficult for a lot of businesses indoors and out. And then driving traffic back into, so that's an opposite challenge, getting people to actually come in to the building when they didn't feel comfortable quite yet. Capacity levels are something we heard a lot of this weekend as well. If you're working with minimal staff due to square footage restrictions and what you're allowed to have in a building, monitoring your capacity, whether you have it posted or not, will become difficult depending on your staffing needs. So working with your store layout, changing it, doing the best you can to make those adjustments so that it's easier for you to monitor is going to be a really big help moving forward. Some of the biggest takeaways that we had from this weekend, I loved this. We can do this. So the positivity is there, definitely there. Knowing that you want to keep your staff and customers safe and control how clean and safe your environment is one thing, but managing your customers is going to be a whole nother ball of wax. That is going to be your biggest challenge going forward. You can prepare based on what restrictions are in place, your employees and your staff and your establishment. But what you can't prepare for is who's going to come in. That's where you need to prep the hardest. It's great to see positive like this. If we could overcome the unknown like we had this past weekend, and then we can sure have a great finish to 2020. So businesses and retailers, you know, over 120 restaurants and retailers in our area opened this weekend. Percentage-wise, maybe a little less that didn't respond quite as well. But they had a lot of unknown. They did not know how this was going to work. They didn't know what it was going to look like. We're the first ones. We couldn't take any examples from anyone else in the state. So being able to overcome that was a big takeaway. Outdoor seating, if you have that availability, then by all means, take advantage of it. We are working right now with city regulations, like many communities, to see if we can make some adjustments to our downtown spaces to allow restaurants for more. Townships are working very hard to see if there's ways to put parking lots together for some of the restaurants. This is all things that take time because there's so much in place that doesn't allow them to do that in the first place. But they did find that that's going to probably going forward be the biggest one. We have one little outdoor seating place in our downtown, and then a couple others a few miles out of town, and they seemed to fare very, very well. Masks are not required in outdoor seating necessarily the same way. So people were a little more relaxed to go there, we found. One of the other takeaways that being vigilant with customers about their masks, moving tables, and social distancing. So we did have reports from restaurants that they would seat people at a table and they would go back and take the order and do what they needed to do, and they would come back and they would have the customers moved the tables to be closer to the other table over there because their friends were there. You've got to stand a line. If you're going to stand on it, you got to stand on it hard. One big thing we heard a lot this weekend was that if everybody sticks together from a business community standpoint, if all of your restaurants collaborate, if all your retail collaborate and follow the same rules, it does make it much easier. And you're all required to do things by the executive order, but how you go about enforcing it is where that continuity comes in to help people. you're gonna have people putting up a fuss. You're gonna have people arguing with your employees. Some will be fine with it. You tell them you have to wear a mask, or I'm sorry, you can't move that table. Some will just nod to you and say, okay, then I'll leave and take my business elsewhere. Some will try to get a little bit more confrontational. That's our biggest concern, is that you're always going to have a percentage of people who could be inconsiderate and rude. And it's no secret right now in this state that that is an issue. It's no secret across the country. We have a political divide that's in the middle of a health crisis and an economic crisis. So tensions are high. You've got to manage that ahead of time and figure out how you're going to work with that, and take care of your employee health. So many people right now just want to be normal, and most are doing what they need to do, is another big thing that we heard. So I think when it comes to employee health, one of the other things we talked about with a lot of our businesses this weekend was, you may have 4-hour shifts, 6-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts, and typically you had breaks. You know, you get your 2 15 minutes, you get your lunch. However you're working it for your employees, you need to increase those breaks a lot. One thing we found was unanimous across the board, retail and restaurant, is the burn rate for someone is so much higher now than ever before. You are bringing back employees who have, many of them probably not worked in your establishment for 2 months or more. And it's a completely new environment. Your floor plan looks different. Your requirements are different. They have to wear a mask. They have to sanitize. They have to clean this. They have to clean that. They have to monitor the door. The stress is tough. So make sure you're putting in place ahead of time and speaking with your employees to have as many breaks as possible. A walkaway break is what one business owner is calling it. We have a rotation walkaway break, no more than 90 minutes on the retail floor, and you have a walkaway break. Somebody moves you from wherever you're at and says, okay, go walk away. The difficulty in that, on the same token, is when you're putting your plan together for who is where. Sometimes the most effective thing in retail space, depending on the number of employees that you can have in your building at a time, is to try to keep them in the same spot as long as possible, so that there isn't overlap and confusion, and it does present a safer environment for your consumers as well. So I said the biggest thing this weekend for us was masks. It really, truly was a big thing. We had some local press since then, obviously local radio stations, news stations, newspapers. We had, I did more interviews this week than I cared to, as so did our hospital infectious disease director and our health department. And we all said the same thing. You know, you are required to wear a mask, and even if you don't like it or you don't believe in it, just do it for the comfort and safety of others. It's not for you, because that's what our business owners are asking. Our business owners are saying, I would just feel so much more comfortable if everybody wore a mask, because then my staff feels comfortable. It has nothing to do with where the belief line goes. It's making your staff comfortable and making sure that you're doing everything you can to have an operating business and have some sort of revenue right now. And I can tell you, just from one that posted on our local news station last night, within, gosh, I want to say maybe 20 minutes, half hour, there were 700 comments, and it wasn't pretty. And so it's, that is going to be the hardest part going forward, I think, for not just us, but for the entire state, for the entire country, is that's become like the hot button. And so you need to decide as a business now how hard you're going to enforce that, what you're going to do to enforce that, and if you're ready to lose customers for it, or if you're going to be a little bit more lax. And there's nothing to say either one is wrong, because back to a million times over, we are required to wear masks in public spaces according to the executive order, but as many people will tell you, it's not enforceable either. So that's kind of one of the biggest things that, you know, we have been hoping people take away, and we've been working with our businesses, and they're ready this weekend to try again. And that's the other thing. Get ready to adapt. You're gonna change it. I had businesses tell me I changed my floor plan from Friday to Saturday to Monday. 3 times I changed my floor plan because we saw that the flow wasn't working. The markings on the floor weren't working. So get ready to be very adaptable is probably one of the other big takeaways. So that's what I have, and I'll stop sharing that. Don't necessarily need to. There we go.
Thank you, Nikki. Well, let's open it up for questions. I think everybody is pretty much on mute except me. So since this is our first experience doing it this way, if you would all unmute yourselves. Amy, do you need to do something to make that happen? All right, everybody, if you would unmute yourself and feel free to ask Nikki a question. Everybody's pretty quiet out there.
Nikki, what has the response been about wearing gloves? Because that is another PPE issue that I work at the Muskegon Museum of Art, and I'm working on kind of getting us obviously prepared, hopefully to open. But there's been a lot of back and forth. I know the CDC says unless you're handling a sick person or cleaning that you don't need to wear gloves. And we're really encouraging our staff to wash hands as opposed to wearing gloves because of the contamination. But what has been the consensus up north?
Same thing. Same exact thing. So obviously prep your restaurants, you know, and servers are, one thing we're finding is there's kind of a little bit of a, I would say more restaurants are leaning towards servers even wearing gloves as well. But again, as you just mentioned, the hand washing is becoming more important. So we have a lot of businesses that are doing employees depending on the touch points. So that's what you have to go back to. What are the employees' touch points? For determining who wears gloves and who doesn't, because it is more vague than the masks are. But it's definitely not as big of a concern we've seen for businesses as the masks have been. The masks seem to be the big focus, but it's what are your employees touching? And unless it's food, most businesses in Northern Michigan up here are more on sanitize, hand wash. There's sanitized stations everywhere in businesses. So we're lucky enough to have a local distillery that flipped to sanitization right away. So, I mean, that's not something we're finding hard to find up here. Whereas we had a harder time finding gloves initially. And so that's kind of, I think we got into that practice long before we got to the point of opening.
I have a question.
Yes.
Your restaurants, what are they doing about condiments? Are they using all packets to go type things?
Nothing on the tables.
Okay.
Nothing on the tables. They will bring, so many of them have learned, so there's nothing on the tables, no, and they've switched, many of them have all switched to packets. If they bring something that is centralized to the table that's not individual use, then it has to go back in and be sanitized after, along with everything else. So they're doing that too for a visual safety for the consumer. It makes them feel more comfortable. Now, some of our restaurants that have, you know, more than just a packet of ketchup or mustard or more than salt and pepper, that have some of their more signature, I would call it, sauces and things like that, have actually chose to not have those available at all while they're waiting for smaller individual containers that they can fill in the back. Because that's the one thing we're finding too is, you know, supply chain, my gosh, trying to get open in 3 days when you've shut your ordering down was, you know, that was huge. So many of them have already altered their menus if they were restaurants anyway, doing curbside, but they found that getting containers and those individual supplies are a little bit more difficult to get.
How about, menus. Are they paring their menus down? Are they minimalizing what they're offering?
Yes, and looking at it from the standpoint, restaurants are looking at it from the standpoint of, it's also how long you want somebody sitting in that seat. If you have 50% of your capacity, how are you going to make money? Well, you're going to turn your table quicker. So some have actually instituted, you know, no more than 90 minutes for in-person dining, or 60 minutes only. And they've paired the menu in such a way that they know that it will move faster, even some of our our higher end restaurants. In addition to that, menus are disposable and not reused, or they have, fully laminated and their sanitizing station menus as well. But a lot of them have really toned down and not offering that full, because it gives them that availability to kind of bring the food out quicker. They know what they've got. They can move people through faster. And reservations have been huge this past weekend.
And that worked pretty well rather than walk in?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And it definitely did for some. I mean, not every restaurant is going to have that natural need anyway, but for those that were looking at their space being very small, their dining space, once it was cut, it was easier to do reservations in that 90-minute block, because they found that people got impatient having to wait. And that got back to the congregating on the sidewalk. And so now you have, you know, people that are waiting for a table, and now your group of 6 went to a group of 16, 20. Now they're talking now, you know, so, and then somebody drives by and gets mad at a restaurant because I saw a group of 20 people standing outside and they weren't social distancing. Perception was massive this weekend. You know, for the poor business that somebody was standing outside without a mask on, retailer or restaurant, somebody else across the street was with a mask on taking a photo and posting it on Facebook.
Jeez.
That's what we saw. That's the harsh side of this.
Yeah.
And the sad side that's not going to go away. So it's back to, as a business owner, your mental well-being and your employees' mental well-being are going to be just as important as your health and safety right now.
Did they reduce their hours then?
Yes, many have reduced hours.
What was their typical closing time?
Most were closing, which was crazy. It's so unusual for Memorial Day. Most restaurants, even in the downtown, were closing by 8 or 9 o'clock, and that's not normal for downtown at all.
All right, one more question and I'll stop dominating the conversation.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
How about the bars? Did they take out the bar stools? Did they reduce the number of no bar stools at all?
I had 2 that took out all bar stools, and then I had quite a few others that had a long enough bar that they were able to maybe, so essentially what happened is 4 people got to sit at the very long bar. But most just did not do bar seating. They were just like, you know, we're just not going to do bar seating. We're not going to count that. And that seems to be a little bit better right now, because that's a harder one to manage. Plus it gives your bartender the availability to have that distancing a lot better. So there's also protection for the employees.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Nikki, you kind of shared with me in the conversation we had yesterday about in-store confrontations, and that it wasn't necessary. Would you kind of share your story about that? Because I think that's important.
You know, it's the confrontations is, I think, something we all knew was going to happen. We're all worried about. We heard some scary stories, you know, a few weeks ago. What you have to decide as a business owner is how hard you're going to stand on this line, and who's going to be the one that does that, because you will have confrontation. I mean, we had it happen. You will have somebody come in and say, I'm not wearing a mask, and get angry. And you'll have others that just walk out. But you've got to be preparing for that ahead of time. And you've got to look to your employees, be very picky about who's going to be the one that's managing who's coming through. Because, I mean, it is required that you're supposed to have somebody, you know, that's watching your customer flow. Decide very, very much in advance who that's going to be. And just know that some of these, I mean, some of them were pretty, it was sad. We had stories of, you know, somebody's and it's also consumer to consumer. So that's what else you have to be ready for. You have to be ready for the fact that you can have somebody in a mask standing at your plexiglass checkout counter making a purchase, and somebody in line behind them doesn't have a mask, and then somebody behind them does have a mask, and they will say things to each other. The consumers will say things to each other. And so you're not even involved in this at this point. And so that's what you have to, you know, it's a stressor. It's a massive stressor. I think the biggest thing businesses need to be ready for going forward is getting ready to deal with that, and knowing that if you're not a confrontational person, you're going to have to learn how to do confrontation nicely and with a smile. Easier to just to walk away and say, okay, thank you, I appreciate it. But yeah, seeing some customer to customer conversations for one business in particular was a little bit of a hard thing to witness. And they were just like, okay, everybody, that's, okay, that's enough, because there are those, and it goes both ways, definitely both ways. So.
Nikki, what was the response? I know some of our concern is that I know some people like cannot wear a mask, if you have asthma or things like that. But I mean, there's no way, it's just like a service dog. I feel like sometimes it's so hard to know like who gets a pass and who doesn't. How did they deal with that?
So one thing that a lot of our businesses have adopted is with the signage on the door, please wear a mask. And if they are going to ask for someone to put one on, it's very conversationally, if you're able to wear a mask, we would like you to put one on. If you don't have one, we have one for you. And so it's if you are able, so that you're protecting that, because that will become another issue going forward, is discrimination. And it is like a service dog. And one of the, funny things, not funny things, but it's just ironic in that same sense, is that dog now is a service dog. Restaurants and retailers have been dealing with that for the last couple of years. Well, now everybody in the world, it seems like, has asthma. And, I don't have to wear a mask. I have asthma. And it's like, wow, okay. I didn't realize it was that prevalent. That's what one business owner told me. He goes, I had 10 people in a row that came in and I can't medically wear a mask. And he's like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's in the phrasing for sure. And the bottom line is it's not enforceable. So as a business, you have to make that decision ahead of time. No matter what, it's not enforceable. You can't call your local police department on somebody coming into your building not wearing a mask. Anything about that.
Nikki, did you have any input from from hotels at all in your survey, or what happened in that environment up your way?
So this might be why some locals in your community will get frustrated. There is, and has never been, leisure travel to hotels throughout this entire time. Hotels have remained open to be there for those displaced by COVID, to be there for essential workers, essential travel for work, not for leisure. Most of our hotels, when the executive order went in, most of our hotels, maybe one or two stayed open in the initial first few weeks, and then a few more opened, but only a couple rooms, only limited capacity. But then what they found out as travelers started coming up is they can't ask, why are you traveling? Is it essential travel? They are not allowed to ask. Many of the chains have been told, don't you dare ask that, or we're gonna get slapped with discrimination. So you can't ask that. So I spoke with all of our hotels this weekend. None of them were as, normally hotels up here would be sold out on Memorial Day weekend. But almost every single one of them was over 70% capacity.
Wow.
And now a lot of those did not leave the hotel to go into the downtowns or the restaurants. Many of those, I heard from several people, brought coolers, brought food with them. They didn't want to go and shop and dine. They just wanted to go to the trails, to the lake, so that's a good part of it. The hotels are, doing the very best they can as far as how they clean and what they do. But it's crazy hard. And that's where, that's where some of the angst comes in from your community members, is that, you're not supposed to go to a vacation rental. The only way you're supposed to travel is to go to your second home. But yet you drive by a hotel parking lot and it's half full. And you know that that's not the case. But as a business mind, economy mind, you're like, okay, well, we need them here. So it's a hard place to go there. And I saw in the chat, pools, no. Even if a hotel is open, pools, saunas, spas, those are not allowed to be open. Except we have one hotel that's on tribal land, and they are allowed to keep it open. So that was a revelation I got yesterday from that hotel. And oh, okay. And they had 70 rooms over the weekend.
That's amazing. Are most of the park areas open?
Yes, so, but not for camping.
Okay.
So state parks are allowed to open, but like ours up here is like, yeah, it's gonna be June 15th before we're ready. For camping. They are allowed to have it, but they're not there yet. Private campgrounds, no. Our city campground is trying really hard to get open, but it's still not allowed. We're hoping that maybe that'll be something that comes in on the smaller side of things. But our parks have been open. I mean, we have so much trail and park. We only have one park that we had to close early on, and that was our skate park. And the city had to make the choice to close that because there was complaints that too many kids were gathered together. So silly as that sounds. So, you know, but yeah, parks are open. We're looking at, we have a large Central Park in our downtown district that we're looking at converting a portion of that to outdoor takeaway dining. And doing some pagodas and picnic tables and, you know, fancy spaces, and of course all roped off and private kind of things, so that we can kind of enhance some of that, keeping that curbside takeaway going for those that don't want to wait in an in-person dining, or give them that ability to eat outside too. So
Fantastic. Any more questions? Vicki?
Good morning. Going back to your situations when you're in your when people are in line and negativity starts to escalate, what are some suggestions how we can let our retailers know how to de-escalate some of these situations so they're not feeling like they're being almost attacked and other people are feeling attacked? And there's got to be a happy medium that we can, without involving the police, because you don't want to do that either, but you also want to have that option. So I mean, it goes from one degree to another. So I don't know how we can explain that to our retailers in a quick little, I don't know, pamphlet that says this is how you de-escalate. So I mean,
this is how you de-escalate. Yeah. So one of the things that our health department actually put out in part of their business toolkit was suggestions on, you know, calming phrases, things to say. I said the other day that I feel like a kindergarten teacher, because what I keep saying over and over and over again is be kind, be patient, be safe, be considerate, and just messaging that in your community, no matter who that comes from. Any leader in your community needs to be saying that repeatedly to anybody who will listen, because it is absolutely positively going to be how we get through this going forward. We can totally go forward. We proved this weekend, you can go forward. Is it hard? Yes. One of the things that we've told businesses is that the ones that are the most concerned, and some of them have it under control, they feel like they're good. One of the things that we've talked about with businesses is if you see confrontation, the easiest way to avoid that is to, instead of, you know, you need to leave or you need to go, find a way to distract it, to calm it down as best you can. If it can't, you are not the enforcer beyond what you're comfortable being. And that's the hard part is, you know, yes, you can call the police if there's, you know, people fighting in your business. But sometimes it's easier, even though you're supposed to require those masks, sometimes it's easier to just walk away. Don't put yourself in a position where you have to be the one standing in between people. And how your employees react to everyone is really going to be the best part. And that goes back to, if you're requiring a mask upon entry and you're refusing people in, do it with a smile. Granted, you can't see the smile, but your eyes smile. Make sure that every conversation you have that has anything to do with what you're requiring somebody is done in a very positive tone. And, you know, that your smile as big as you can under that mask so your eyes smile, so people know that you're not being mean, you're not taking away their rights, you're just trying to protect people.
Thank you.
Great answer. Great answer, Nikki. Chris?
The reservation only situation. What if you have people that want to walk in and you have open tables? Did you let them?
I have some that were, I had some that did take this weekend that did it that way if they didn't have a reservation coming for a while.
Mhm.
They're all saying reservations strongly recommended, the ones that are pulling that, going that route. But I had one in particular that, there's a couple times in a normal summer I would have called ahead for a reservation. They've got decent seating, and really went hard with the reservations. And they found that, they had a couple times over the weekend where, they had an empty table and the next reservation wasn't for 2 hours. And it was like, okay, yeah, we'll take that.
Mhm.
Because let's be honest, you need to take every ounce of business you can get.
Mhm. Yes.
So, that all comes back to the biggest part of this. As restaurant owners, as retailers, you need to be back in business. You need to take every opportunity you can. So that's where confrontation, how many people you're going to allow, how many reservations you get, all those things are playing in your head all day long. And we know that. And it's, there's no two ways around it. It's unfair. No business owner should have to be in this position, but here we are. So, hopefully using the right tactics gets everybody through it the best way possible.
Thank you.
So Nikki, this year with short-term rentals being not supposed to be operating, and we know they are.
Some are, yes.
Some are. As you see, your chamber is located right in the downtown. What are you seeing happening at your particular building, and how are you handling the interface with the visitors that are coming up to the community?
So technically we can't open our visitor center yet because we don't fall in office that cannot be done remotely, because visitors can find information on our website. So we don't sell anything, so we're not retail. So, and I've had a lot of talks with staff. So, putting my business hat on and discussing with my staff their comfort level of opening a visitor center. Our space for people to come in and ask us questions about our, beautiful town is very, very, very small. And so with that social distancing in mind, I don't believe that we will have the visitors center open until probably the end of July. We're putting in just a casement window on one of our side doors, and we're going to do a little walk-up visitor. If you would like to have a brochure, ask. We're happy to hand it to you. We're happy to ask your questions. And that also goes with the fact that people touching brochures and sanitizing brochures, there's just no way. And I'm looking at it from what's the best thing to do for my staff. And I have, my staff would prefer to just work remotely the rest of the summer. I get it. I really do. I'm comfortable being in there and handling that, but they're not. And therefore, I'm looking to them saying, I'm not going to push you into a position you're not comfortable. But yeah, so for the visitor center, because I know what it's like in there in the summer, there's days when that door open and within 7 seconds, you have 55 people crammed in, a 12 by 20 space. And there's just no way to stop that. So the best thing to do for us is going to be to limit entry into the building. And that was a tough choice. That was a really tough choice.
Yeah, it is, because you want to welcome guests to the community.
Yes, we do. So it's a hard choice. So we're going to do it through a little window.
We're trying to figure it out here as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And again, the sanitize, you can sanitize a lot of things, but
not brochures.
not one of them.
Yeah.
So, and an outdoor kiosk, that's crazy. That'd be insane to have a brochure kiosk outside where everybody's touching it. So yeah, so we're just looking at it and if we haven't gotten tech by now in the last 2 months, when all of the information you could ever possibly want is online, and if we haven't figured that out in the last 2 months, we're never going to figure that out. So
right.
I think people will be, more apt. Granted, you're going to have traditional people who want a map, and that's okay. We can hand it to you through the window.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. Well, we all look to you because you're kind of setting the stage for everybody else. So we really do appreciate that.
We're trying not to fall off the stage. So, case counts will tell a lot in 2 weeks, and we know that.
Yeah.
prepared for that. We absolutely know that we will see in 2 weeks. If people didn't hear, there was over the weekend we got positive cases, 2 positive cases in Grand Traverse County, because and this is what you have to be prepared for as a business. And we talk about out of state. 2 people from out of state came up on Thursday for the holiday weekend to spend with their family. So they weren't, you know, going to a hotel or anything like that. They came to stay with their family. They were both symptomatic. By Saturday, one of them was hospitalized. The other is now quarantined to a hotel, like what it was intended for, but so sick. We're not talking a sniffle, a sneeze. We're talking so sick that they had to be hospitalized. They knew they were symptomatic on the way up. They both admitted it, and they came up anyway. That's what you have to be prepared for. And that's why, you know, we went back. That's why we wear a mask, you know? And so, yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer, but I think for those of us along the lakeshore that we know we can't just sit down. We got to get up and do something. So just be safe.
Yeah.
Know that you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fix them along the way.
I think that was the other message when we were talking that you so strongly stressed is be ready to change.
Yes.
If something doesn't work, go back and look at it and be ready to do that all the time. I thought that was really a good message.
I have a couple of restaurants who their layout is completely different than it was Monday already, because they just found that flow doesn't work. You know, okay, my tables are 6 feet apart. I'm at 50% occupancy, but I didn't take into consideration that my servers are going to go, and if they're too close to this table, then that person feels uncomfortable. So, you know, I have one that's like, 50%, not even close. I'm at like 30% by the time I removed everything. And so they amped up their curbside marketing big time, you know, so there's that as well. You know, your marketing is going to be huge for you. And I know your chamber will take care of you with that. I mean, we have 2 pages dedicated on our website to restaurants and retail as far as, are you open? Are you curbside? Are you delivery? Are you in-store? Are you appointment only? We've got it, you know, and they tell us constantly. So, and we just share that as much as we can.
I think that's really a good point, because we do have all that on our website, but we are relying on our restaurateurs and our retailers to let us know what's happening. So if any
and I keep reminding everybody, like every couple days, I'm like, hey, you know, here's this page with 75 other restaurants on it, and you know, they're telling me where they're at. Where are you? And because trust me, people are going to our website. Our website has more traffic. Our Facebook page has more turn than it ever has in the history of it's crazy. And you know, all phone calls are forwarded to my phone because we're not in the office. And I can't even tell you how many phone calls a day I get about what restaurants are open, what retail's open. I'm coming up this weekend, you know, and that's a great call. I'm coming up this weekend. I want to go, do you have a home here? But I can't, because I want them here and our businesses need them. But in the same token, it's like, oh, okay. So, but yeah, so people want to know. So if you can get a source for it, do it.
Yeah, I think it's been amazing how folks that are interested in our communities and our own businesses are using the website even more. I mean, it's become a critical piece of information sharing, but also getting that message out. It's astounded me how many more page views we're getting, and it's really great because it is a source of information that everybody can share, and it's easily accessible. So
we flipped ours within a couple days and we actually took over almost the whole portion of the website. Has now flipped to our messaging right off the bat was Petoskey Strong. And so we flipped to a Petoskey Strong page, and now we started out, I think, with 6 modules. Now we're up to 12 modules on that page, from business resources to restaurants to employee mental well-being, community news, health news. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. It's huge. That I'm surprised I haven't crashed it yet. The more I put on there, but it's, you know, people need information right now. And as business owners, one thing you got to remember is that your employees are going to need information. They're going to need to know what really is required of them. You know, they're your priority, you know, and that's one thing we've talked about for a long time now. They are your priority. Take care of them. the best that you can. And, you know, we won't even get into the topic of those who won't come back versus those who will come back. That's a whole can of worms. So, no.
Nikki, one of the things that I wanted to circle back to was your signage, your universal signage that you used.
Yeah.
That was not only in the downtown at stores, but it was, how
It's
else
everywhere.
was that? How else? Because from the impression I got, it was just plastered all over your
Yeah,
community.
we're sending,
So,
it's gone everywhere. So it's obviously in our downtown district. It's also in our city building, our county building, our parks, the entrance to all our parks that are public space and private space parks. It's in grocery stores. Some of the big box won't put them up. But you know, what are you going to do about that? But yeah, even outside retail, outside businesses, you know, we blasted it out to our members. Our local newspaper was able to put it out there as well. We've sent it everywhere, and we've got a huge printing coming that will be distribution pickup for people at, you know, key locations. So rather than trying to get into the chamber, which we know is going to be difficult, setting appointments, you know, like Lowe's is like, well, I'll take a stack and put them on my counter because I'm at this end of town, and people can just, if a business is in, they can grab one. And then grocery store at the other end of town's like, yeah, we'll do that too. So being open points for those to be able to be distributed. So it's just, we want everybody to know that we welcome you to Petoskey. And two, this is how we hope you can behave while you're here so that everybody's safe and we just get back to business.
that's awesome. So we have 4 minutes left. Do you have any other words of wisdom for all of those folks that are listening? And I would put a plug in. This will be, we're recording this, so as soon as possible, we'll get it up on our website. And I would encourage all of you that are on this call, if you know other merchants that aren't, or restaurateurs or hotels, motels, anybody that you think would, that this message is important to, and I think it's important for everybody in our community to hear, let them know it's on our website, or download it and send it to people, because I think we really need to, and Petoskey's done a really great job of all coming together to make sure that everybody is successful. So Nikki, you've got 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. No,
3 minutes. I took a minute. I'm sorry.
No, I've talked enough. I just want to say that, you know, if I give you anything, it's like I said, it's the be patient, be safe, be kind, but also the conversation we've had over and over this week with our businesses is, you've got this. I mean, you built a business in the first place. You started it up. It's just different now, and you will adapt and you will be fine. So just be positive is the biggest thing, and spread that to other retailers and other business owners, and to your staff and to all of your service workers, because they need that right now. So just, you got this. If you made it this far, you got this. Just keep going. Be innovative.
Nikki, one question. Who generated those universal signs messages? Where did that come out of? So who is in charge of that? You were? Okay.
Yeah. The chamber. So our neighboring towns have done it too. Charlevoix's done it. Harbor Springs has done it. Traverse City's done it. So it was just all of the entities that are involved, health department, hospital, city, county, we all speak on a regular basis anyway, since this all started. So it was just hey, we need to do something. Let's pull this together. What do we want it to say? We designed it quickly and thought we had time to have a lot printed professionally, and then ended up just emailing it to everybody and going, you're opening in 2 days, here, go print this off. Yeah. So now we're going back around with the better quality ones. But yeah, so it was just as long as everybody agreed, as long as the health department and your health department and hospital are the two key ones more than anything, because obviously your health department has guidelines that they're requiring. So yep, okay. It was easy.
Yeah,
I can. You have Joy has the template too, so you can use that.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. That I really appreciate you sharing that, and I think that it's really important because we know that day is going to be coming for us, probably sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
and I think
so too.
With the DDA, with the Spring Lake and the Grand Haven DDAs, the hospital. I think that we need to convene a group of folks and kind of take a look at that and get rolling on that sooner rather than later. That I think is really important. So this is so timely for you to be here with us. I'm thrilled that it worked out, and all the hard work that you guys have done. It's really been yeoman's work, and it's really kind of set the stage to help us all be more successful in that transition. And after all, we want to send a good message about Michigan's a great place to spend your time
Right.
and your money, right?
Yes.
Well, let's give Nikki, can we give Nikki a thumbs up all the way around? Thank you
Thanks.
so much for being with us this morning.
Happy to.
I really appreciate it, and best of luck moving forward. And any updates you want to shoot me at any time, I'll be glad to share.
And I'll put my email in the chat box, and if anybody has any direct questions, feel free. And maybe we can find collaborative restaurants or retail that match your business or one and see if there's a coordination there that can be made to ask some direct questions too. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Have an absolutely wonderful day. And thank you all for participating and being a part of this very important conversation.
Thank you, Joy, for having me. Happy to be here. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.